As a lover of great stories, I often enjoy this podcast put out by The Moth, an organization in New York City which holds events where people tell true stories live without notes. One of my favorite Moth stories was told by a former New York City cop named Steve Osborne. Osborne's job was to hunt down fugitives, people who had skipped bail or who had other kinds of warrants. So early one morning, he and his team are outside the apartment door of a wanted criminal named Hector, or as he pronounced it, Hecta. Before knocking, Osborne passes around Hector's mugshot so everyone can get a good look. The kid has beady eyes, a pockmarked face, a scraggly goatee, ugly scar under his left eye. Mugshots are unflattering under any circumstances, but as Osborne says, this was truly a face that only a mother could love. When Osborne knocks, this little woman in a bathrobe, fuzzy pink slippers, opens the door and tells him that her son had been murdered a week before. His guys make some calls, the story checks out. But before leaving, just to make sure they're talking about the same person, Osborne pulls out Hector's mugshot. When she sees it, the mother starts to sob, these moaning, racking sobs. Yes, it's him. Osborne pockets the mugshot and starts to go, but then the woman asks if she can see the photo again. Now he's confused, like, did she not get a good enough look the first time? Or is she not sure now? Or what's going on? He hands it to her. She clutches it to her chest like she's hugging it. And then she asks him if she can keep it. He's incredulous. This photo? You want to keep this photo? This ugly, harshly lit shot of her son's sullen face with numbers across the bottom? Osborne isn't sure what to do. It's hardly department policy to go handing people's mugshots out to the public. The mother explains that Hector spent his whole adult life committing crimes or serving prison time and never really came around. So she doesn't have a single photo of him. He was just a kid that she utterly lost to the streets, which wasn't that unusual in that neighborhood. So Osborne tells her she can keep the photo. Then she crosses the room to a bookshelf with various family photos in nice frames. The grandfather in his army uniform, graduation pictures, weddings, and very gently, she sets her son's mugshot down among them. When I hear Jesus' lament in today's reading over Jerusalem, I think of that story. Because to me, that mother's love and grief over her son is very much like Jesus's over Jerusalem. To understand this, you have to appreciate that by Jesus' day, Jerusalem has been the center of Jewish identity and religious life since Solomon built the temple there some 1,000 years previous, give or take 50 years of exile. So Jerusalem embodies all the promise of God's people, all the hope that God holds out that we would keep God's law, that they would treat the widow and the orphan and the stranger with care and build a society of justice. Yet instead, God's people have rejected and even murdered the prophets God has sent to call them back to God's covenant. Prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah in the Old Testament, and John the Baptist, and soon Jesus himself. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, Jesus laments, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers a brood under her wings, and you were not willing. My mom once told me that whenever she encountered a homeless person on the street, she couldn't help but think about how this disheveled, smelly, down and out adult was once a little infant, probably with parents who poured their hopes and dreams into him. Well, you could call my mom sentimental. Maybe she was, but she was also a mother. It wasn't hard for her to imagine another mother, a mother of the adult before her, grieving for what had happened to her child, just as Hector's mother grieved for what befell her son, just as Jesus grieves for how Jerusalem has fallen away from God's hopes. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. Such tender maternal love in his cry. Such sadness. I want to invite you into a little Lenten discipline today. What if we were to listen to these words as if they were addressed to us? How might we be the Jerusalem over which Jesus weeps, both individually and collectively as members of our society or our city or our church? In other words, what in us has rejected the truth and those whom God has sent to challenge us with it? What in us has remained unwilling to gather under Jesus' wings? For what in us does Jesus grieve and hope? Are we still trying to kick a habit that is damaging ourselves and our loved ones? Do we persist in clinging to judgments about other groups of people? Have we broken relationships that in our pride we refuse to try and mend? Have we failed out of laziness or cynicism to seize the tools we are given to make the world a better place for others? Have we built more walls than bridges? Whatever it might be, the wings are still open to gather us in. That's the thing about Jesus' words today, at least as I hear them. There's no judgment in them, just sadness and love and hope that we will yet have a change of heart. It's a hope that never gives up, a hope that waits and waits, a hope that places our mugshot tenderly alongside the silver-framed wedding portraits and baby announcements, even when that mugshot is the kind only a mother could love. Amen.